All right, so this is for Chuan Shin, and so this is his submission for the Jaeger contest for DeviantArt. And the first thing I would say right off the bat is if you look at the values here, if you refresh the values, you have the portion of your values all in this same tone. And so there's no real sense of dramatic light going on in here. On top of that, it's very left-right pose, so it's very balanced and very symmetrical, and very kind of this lighted area, very mid-tone area. So what you need to do is make things a little bit more dynamic. And so I did a couple different things. So first thing I did was I separated the layers just to break this apart. And the buildings here, like looking at this, from this standpoint, it's really kind of bisects everything in half. So if you take this from a visual standpoint, you've got the straight line going across here, which we'll just move this up one layer, and then you've got the pillar basically crossing everything just about dead center, and you've got equidistant characters kind of almost separated in there. And so what I think you need to do is I think you need to kind of adjust and separate and kind of organize this a little bit more. And so what you're doing here is let's break this apart a little bit. So I'm going to take the original layer, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of paint over, and we're going to break apart, and I'm just going to kind of really quickly push in there this scene of dark clouds, the pink layers, and things like that. And so that's going to give me a building that's much more kind of interesting and broken apart. And let's do a little bit of kind of mid-tone dark gray smoke that you've got going on in here. And so I'm just going to paint that, so it's basically showing damage and destruction type thing. I'm just going to go in there and darken a little bit, and since it's background, I'm not going to make that a big issue. The next thing I'm going to do is break apart. So I've got lighting here coming this way, and so that's my main light source. And so I'm going to go with the darker blue here, and I'm going to go on a multiply, and we're just going to kind of add in that the darker shadows, because right now you've got no real shadows going on in your background. Okay, so I'm just going to rough in some quick shadows, and then I'm going to go with a slight dodge or screen layer and add some of this mid-tone here, and just we're gonna probably just use the dodge tool here, and I'm just going to kind of dodge some of this up a little bit. Yeah, so something like that, just to pop a little bit more into the background to emphasize that idea. Now we can always go back and we can always, paint over and add in some of the darks and things like that. Okay. And that's going to give that sun reflecting on some of that light. You could even put in some shadows here, that this other building is casting shadows on, and I think that's going to help it out. And right now both of these are kind of a defensive pose, so I know you realize you only have 24 hours to do this, but what you might want to do is you might want to grab this guy here, and let's see what we can do with this real quick here. So I'm just going to grab this and transform it down here like this, and then transform this one, and I think this looks a little bit better. it's not so like, it's not so straight ahead and like in your face. And so I'm just gonna kind of muddle out some of this layer here. Let's add some of this murkiness back here, and let's kind of clone this. So I'm just gonna grab this here and just kind of clone that up like this, like so. Grab this piece here and just kind of bring that down like so, and let's brush some of that in the air here. So, but you get the picture. So maybe I'll just clone stamp a little bit of this. Now let's grab. All right, good enough. So you've got this picture in the way now, and so I'm just gonna actually get rid of this one here and go back and just paint some of this back here. Okay, so now rough, some smoke, dark, like so. Okay, so that gives me a little bit better, a little bit more information to play with. You know, I feel like that alone just adds a little bit more. I'm gonna just add in really quick the finish of the tail on both sides here, and then now with that in place, see, it's a little bit better, a little bit more, you know, kind of organized from that content. And then what you want to do is you want to add in this, and I'm going to clone this layer here, and I would add in a motion blur. So I'm going to add a motion blur on top of it, and we're just going to add it like that, and kind of bring it down till it makes a little bit more sense. So a little bit of motion blur like that, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to erase with a smaller brush here, but I'm going to erase this so it's a more crisp and clean, like motion edge, so that way it looks like there's a trail behind it, not so much that the whole thing is blurred. And I think that was a big issue from before. Then what I would do is start grabbing this type of character here, and let's actually go color dodge crazy with it, and you know, show this guy in the morning light. You know, show out the highlights of the blades, show out the swords and things like that, and you know, have it bring in some of that morning light and that sheen and shimmer. And you see how automatically that pops out and makes things just that much more vibrant. And the same thing here is you want to add in some of those wrinkles, some of that glow from that morning light. And you can see here how adding in just a little bit, you know, kind of really pushes that information down. And then what I would do is I would actually, you've got a really busy background, so I would actually go in and I would add probably a dark brown, and let's just add a new layer here so you can see. So then what I would do is I would put, oops, so it would help to actually be on the layer here. There we go. So I would put, and you can see here by adding up all this smoke of, you know, now it's been in battle, and now you've got, you know, kind of this look and feel. And I would even go into some of this and, you know, fade out the blade, fade out, you know, the legs, even on this guy here, maybe a little bit, you know, so on and so forth. So that gives me a much more 3D effect, and it layers the background and sets the characters off. As you can see, just by doing a little bit of this, I feel like the background is, you know, that much more interesting. You know, and it doesn't have to be all about the sky and that type of thing. You can really kind of erase some of this back and kind of give, you know, little trails and tendrils and things like that to really kind of emphasize the darks and the lights. So, I mean, you know, you can push something like this and then go back on top and push it again, and so you can get a much more interesting scene. It's actually a little bit more dynamic now because things are, you know, things have been kind of really pushed. And then if you want to add even more detail, I would go on this character and add battle damage. You know, these you know, claws and spikes and all that stuff, they were battling this. So, you know, adding in, you know, this type of thing and adding in scrapes, you know, to the armor, tell more of a story. Tell me that, you know, they've been going at each other for a bit here. And so adding in those scrapes, and then even adding in some kind of sparks, and this is a little bit too small to see, but you know, adding in some types of sparks, and I'm exaggerating this, but adding in like sparks in the joints and like that shower where things are like, you know, things are damaged to the point where, you know, he's having major issues, you know, like little sparks are coming out, things, and that tells more of a story. So I hope that helps you.